Did you know that we consume hundreds of products daily without even realizing it? It's true, curious youngsters. Some are obviously made while others have an intriguing creation process. Many people don't consider the process's complexity. Behind everyday products like coffee and toothpaste, curious people such as Mr. CurioCity seek answers to all their questions. For this reason and much more, these are 10 things you consume every day and didn't know how they're made. 1. Ketchup. Fast food by itself is simply delicious. We know that ketchup is the dressing that goes best with French fries or hamburgers. But did you know how it's made? First of all, just in case you were wondering, right? Ketchup wasn't invented in the United States. It was actually the Chinese who, hundreds of years ago, decided to mix tomato with fish and other ingredients in a sauce they called ketchup. But anyway, let's get started with the process. The first thing we're obviously going to need is a few tons of tomatoes. But these, depending on the factory, will come whole, freshly picked from the plants. Alternatively, they can arrive as tomato paste in sturdy bags. This intense paste will be put into some containers where sugar, vinegar, salt, and some other spices will be added. Are they going to finish their secret recipe? Because yes, just like with the mysterious Coca-Cola recipe, many companies don't want to share the special ingredients they add to their ketchup. After a few minutes of being heated and mixing all its ingredients, the ketchup is ready to go through some quality tests and to be bottled so it ends up on our tables. 2 coffees. Most people want to start their day right when they wake up, and that requires energy. Energy that we find in a freshly made cup of coffee. And if you're one of those who drink a lot of this energizing brew, you might have wondered, where does coffee come from? Coffee plants are usually harvested in tropical countries like Colombia or Costa Rica, where the climate conditions are perfect and allow this interesting fruit to grow. After 2 years of planting, the coffee plant is ready to produce, but it won't yield simple beans. What the workers are going to harvest are the reddish berries, which have the bean inside. After harvesting, the berries are washed and processed by a machine that separates the skin and pulp from the coffee bean. After removing the final skin layer, our beans are ready for drying and the next stage of processing. The most crucial step is roasting our beans in massive ovens, typically reaching around 200 degrees Celsius. The coffee beans are roasted for around 20 minutes to achieve their distinct flavor and color. And after this roasting, they will be ready to be delivered as whole beans or ground. 3 Skittles. Despite knowing sweets are bad for our teeth, we often find it impossible to resist chocolate or candy right in front of us. And if we're talking about candy on an international level, we definitely have to mention Skittles. These candies became the top non-chocolate candy in the United States. The process of making these colorful candies is incredibly satisfying. It starts with creating the chewy caramel centers. Then these go through molds to give them the perfect shape. And after that, they get a few layers of candy to finish getting their color and shape. But we know that if they didn't have the characteristic S, they wouldn't be Skittles. So before being mixed and packaged, an S is added to make them unique. Where are the Oompa Loompas? Willy Wonka? Coca-Cola, the most popular drink ever, became a global icon with over 900 factories worldwide and an unrivaled recipe that makes it something unique. The first thing that happens in the factories is the reception of the bottles or aluminum cans where our addictive drink will be stored. If we go with the most popular option of all, we have to know that the bottles don't come in the size we know them, but rather they are much smaller. The bottles will be enlarged in the factory by injecting compressed air. After that, the most crucial element is added, the Coca-Cola. The first thing you need is a few liters of water that will be put into a container. The mixture is heated while syrup, liquid sugar, and other secret ingredients are added, knowing these ingredients would be fatal. After a few minutes, the ready mixture will go through pipes to the bottling area. Carbon dioxide is injected, then Coca-Cola is added, and finally more carbon dioxide to give it the right amount of bubbles and fizz. 5 highlighters. Due to the pandemic and quarantine, classes in many countries have been impacted, with screens potentially replacing paper. But when it comes to summarizing a text, we all know there's nothing better than a good highlighter, but how do they make them? First, the factories receive tons of tiny plastic pellets that will be dyed the desired color, and then they go through a machine that melts them at 240 degrees Celsius to be injected into molds. Once our parts are dry, they will go to another section of the factory where the pieces will start to be assembled. But before the handles, they will receive the different prints that will show the brand and other details of the highlighter. After that, our main piece receives an ink container that is sealed together with other parts, and then it receives an injection of fluorescent ink. What is going to be responsible for highlighting our books? Now the tip is added, the cap is put on, some tests are done, and the highlighter is ready to end up in our hands. 6. Butter. When it comes to breakfast, one of the most consumed foods around the world is toast with butter and some jam or sweet spread on top. And while we'll see the sweets in another video, today we'll see how butter is made. First of all, we need a few thousand liters of milk that arrive at the factory in a refrigerated truck. After unloading, the raw material is put into large containers to separate the fat from the remaining liquid. Spinning briefly to apply centrifugal force, the separated cream will be the main ingredient for our delicious butter. The cream is moved to a different mixer to spin further, separating more liquid from it. After a few minutes, it forms into lumps called butter popcorns. Depending on the batch, salt may or may not be added, and then it moves on to its final stage. Here it is mixed and placed into a block-shaped injector, and the butter loaves are formed to be packaged and end up in the nearest supermarket. Thank you for everything, Mrs. Backhead. 7 syrup, likely more popular in the United States, is typically consumed at breakfast. Nonetheless, I found the process behind it simply incredible. It begins with a 0.39 inches wide, 1.9685 inches deep hole in a maple tree trunk. The tree produces sap in an attempt to heal, which is the main ingredient of our syrup. In the past, buckets were used to collect sap from maple trees. Now, most syrup farms use a network of hoses connected to taps in each tree. Using suction, they bring all the sap to a central spot. When the sap is collected in a large container, it's still a long way from becoming syrup. Containing only about 2% sugar, almost 10.57 gallons of sap are needed for just 1 liter of this addictive food. The first thing to do is to start a long cooking process where the sap will be boiled several times to try to get the maximum amount of concentrated sugar. After a series of boilings, the sap will start losing water and will begin to thicken more and more. The syrup will darken and thicken as the sugar caramelizes during cooking. And finally, it's ready to cool down and be bottled to end up on our breakfast table. 8 pens. Even with the technology we have today, some old-fashioned objects, like a pen might seem, are still very useful. No, ballpoint pens aren't just simple plastic with a bit of ink inside. The process behind their creation is truly incredible. The first thing we need is a tiny little ball that will be responsible for releasing the ink onto the paper in a controlled way. This features some truly remarkable technology. To make these little balls, tungsten carbide is a material used to make armor-piercing ammunition. So yes, it is very, very tough. These little balls are formed with very precise machines and then polished for a few days, so they end up simply perfect. Once we have our main actor, we move on to the next stage, where using molds and melted plastic, our tubes are formed. Then the little ball is placed inside the metal tip, an ink cartridge is filled inside the plastic tube, and everything is assembled. We can now draw and write anything we want. 9. Toothpaste. Every time we wake up and before we go to bed, we brush our teeth with toothpaste. This invention cleans teeth, removes food particles, and protects against cavities. But did you know that even though today's toothpastes come in different colors and have various features, they all follow the same logic that the Egyptians used years ago when they brushed their teeth? The only thing we need is an abrasive substance that scrapes the surface and removes the food particles left in our mouth. And to achieve that, it is produced in the following way. The factory first receives tons of rock, limestone, salt, sand, and some chemicals. The materials then move to a stage where a large mixer crushes hard substances like sand and rock. Finally, the mixture is combined with flavorings and other substances, and a gel is added to create a uniform blend. After a few minutes, the paste is ready and sent to pressurized chambers, where it waits before being placed in the tubes. But how do they make the three colors come out together, sir? Curiosity? The three substances must have the same consistency and are simultaneously injected into the tube via different channels. Then it's sealed at the back and it's ready to clean our teeth. 10 points. In recent years, technology has advanced by leaps and bounds, but even so, many of the devices we use still run on batteries. The battery, invented by Alessandro Volta over 200 years ago, follows the same basic principles today as it did then. Some materials have been changed for efficiency and reduced toxicity. Let's begin the process. The first thing you need is a brass nail, which will be responsible for transmitting the energy. A nickel-plated steel base will be soldered to it, and then it will begin. A rather scientific and complex stage, which could be very well explained by a chemist. But anyway, in short, now a paste will be formed from these huge zinc ingots, which will be melted and mixed with other substances. The paste is centered in the battery, separated from a manganese dioxide and graphite mixture by a special fabric. When the circuit is completed by turning on the device, the chemical reaction between the three elements in the battery releases electrons that flow out of the battery, creating an electric current. Before I go, let me say hi to some subscribers. First, a huge shout out to Valder Vlogs. Next, shout outs to Angel Eduardo Medina and Melanie Rosa, and a big hello to Jamal. I send a big hello to Guillermo, Oswaldo Ivan Nava, and another shout out to Andy Rivera, 99. And will the last shout out go to the legend Nicolas Chavez? Now leave your like, comment, everything. Probably everything you want. Don't forget to share the channel and the video with your friends. So now more kisses. And don't forget to subscribe and click the bell to stay updated with new videos. I am Senor CurioCity.